The Labyrinth of the Mind, a Condensed Journey. Chapter 1, The Fog in the Library. Elias Thorne, a 22-year-old ancient history student, felt his mind was an old, dusty attic. Despite his intelligence, he suffered from a crippling lack of clarity and focus. He'd reread dense paragraphs multiple times, only to recall nothing but the shape of the letters. His memory was failing him, allowing important dates and facts to vanish into a persistent mental fog. One frustrating afternoon in the city's oldest library, he stumbled upon a small, dusty shelf labeled Cognitive Cartography. There he found a slim, leather-bound volume with no listed author, The Labyrinth of the Mind, a pilgrim's guide to inner space. It promised a journey, a series of 10 specific daily brain exercises designed to illuminate the forgotten corners of the mind and forge new, powerful neural pathways. Elias, desperate for a change, accepted the challenge. Chapter 2, The Non-Dominant Hand Challenge, Neurobics. Exercise 1, The Ambidextrous Architect. The book explained that the brain is a bilateral engine, and forcing the non-dominant hand to perform a daily task awakens the opposite hemisphere, forging new neural connections and improving alertness. As a right-handed man, Elias's first task was simple: write his to-do list using only his left hand. The result was a clumsy scrawl, but the intense, deliberate focus required to shape each letter created a faint, tingling mental warmth. For the first time all day, the fog felt a little thinner. The book suggested continuing the neurobic exercises by brushing his teeth and eating a meal with the wrong hand. With each clumsy act, his focus narrowed, pulling his attention away from general worries and concentrating it intensely on the precise movement of the moment. Chapter 3, The Memory Palace Method of Loci. Exercise 2, Constructing the Invisible Home. To address memory issues, the book introduced the method of loci, or the memory palace. This technique anchors abstract information to concrete, familiar spatial locations. Elias chose his small apartment as his palace. The first task was to memorize 10 key events in Julius Caesar's life by placing them as absurd, vivid objects in his entrance hall. For instance, for Caesar's capture by pirates, he pictured a tiny pirate ship sailing out of the keyhole with an oversized gold-painted statue of Caesar on deck. For crossing the Rubicon, he imagined the coat rack was a river, with a toy soldier throwing a red dice into the water. By spending an hour mentally walking through his apartment and seeing these bizarre scenes, he instantly recalled the 10 events in order. The visualization transformed dull facts into a mental movie, making his memory feel like a well-organized, peculiar museum. Chapter 4, Dual Tasking, the Mental Multitasker. Exercise 3, The Sensory Sync. The book warned against digital multitasking, but proposed controlled dual tasking to boost working memory and mental flexibility. The challenge: listen to an academic podcast on an unfamiliar subject while simultaneously solving a simple Sudoku puzzle. The task forced Elias to quickly switch his attention, not simply divide it, between the auditory stream of information, quantum physics, and the visual task, Sudoku. This demanding process acted like an interval workout for his brain. After 20 minutes, he completed the puzzle and retained the core concept of the podcast. The exercise demanded quick, clean shifts of focus, strengthening his prefrontal cortex. Chapter 5, The Power of Verbalization. Exercise 4, The Explainer. This exercise focused on the connection between language and thought. True comprehension is the ability to explain a complex topic simply. The task: choose a difficult concept, like the economic causes of the French Revolution, and explain it out loud for 10 minutes, as if teaching a skeptical 7-year-old. Elias used an analogy about a cake. The king and rich people ate it all, and the poor people starved and got angry, to explain the concepts of economic inequality and the Ancien regime. The act of self-correction and simplifying forced a deeper engagement with the material than reading alone ever could. His critical thinking skills sharpened as he identified the gaps in his own knowledge. Chapter 6, Nature's Focus, Mindfulness. Exercise 5, The Sensory Catalog. To counter the constant information overload of the digital world, the book prescribed mindfulness through sensory focus. The task: spend 15 minutes in nature and identify at least 10 distinct sounds, 10 distinct smells, and 10 distinct visual textures. Sitting in the park, Elias cataloged the far-off hiss of a bus, the earthy scent of moss, and the rough bark of an oak tree. This exercise was an intensive course in pure attention. By concentrating his mind entirely on sensory details, he momentarily silenced his inner chatter. He returned to his studies with a renewed sense of calm and a startling increase in his ability to concentrate on a static page of text. Chapter 7. The Art of Vocabulary Expansion. Exercise 6. The Etymology Detective. A strong vocabulary provides more precise tools for thought. The task: learn 5 new complex English words daily. For each word, research its root, etymology, use it in 3 unique sentences, and teach it to someone else. Elias's words included ephemeral and sempiternal. He discovered that ephemeral, lasting a short time, came from the Greek for upon the day, and sempiternal, everlasting, came from the Latin for always eternal, immediately establishing them as opposites. By linking the words to their origins, he created a network in his mind, not just a list, ensuring the words became rooted in his long-term memory. Chapter 8. The Numerical Challenge. Exercise 7. Mental Math Gymnastics. Relying on a calculator bypasses the brain's natural ability to perform complex calculations, which utilizes working memory and sequential logic. This practice was strenuous, demanding absolute, uninterrupted focus and disciplined, step-by-step thinking. It was like lifting mental weights. The tangible benefit was an improved ability to follow long, complex arguments in his history texts without losing the logical thread. Chapter 9. The Cognitive Reversal. Exercise 8. The What-If Architect. Mental power requires cognitive flexibility and creative problem-solving, the ability to see a situation from multiple contradictory angles. The task: take a firmly held belief, e.g., the internet is a net positive for society, and argue in detail the exact opposite position. Elias spent the evening formulating arguments against the internet, focusing on the loss of community, the erosion of long-form attention, and the tribalism of social media. He felt a mental friction, but by forcing himself to sincerely inhabit the opposite perspective, he strengthened his critical thinking skills and enhanced his mental agility, learning that his own beliefs were not absolute truths. Chapter 10. The Art of Deep Reading. Exercise 9. The Synthesizer. In an age of constant skimming, the book called for a return to deep reading. The task: read an extremely dense, challenging, nonfiction text for 1 hour. Afterwards, write a 1-page summary that not only outlines the main points, but also synthesizes the author's argument, identifying its strengths and weaknesses. Elias chose a philosophical treatise. He read with a pen, actively annotating, drawing diagrams, and questioning the author in the margins. The summary required him to reconstruct the author's world inside his own mind, a process that demanded maximum focus and contextual memory. The philosophical concepts that had seemed impenetrable now felt like complex but navigable terrain. Chapter 11. Integration, the Body-Mind Loop. Exercise 10. The Physical Anchor. The final exercise integrated mind and body, recognizing that the brain is nourished by motion. The task: engage in a moderate to vigorous physical activity for 30 minutes, and immediately afterwards, revisit and practice one of the 9 previous mental exercises. Elias ran for 30 minutes, increasing blood flow and priming his brain with oxygen and nutrients. Immediately after cooling down, he sat down and revisited his memory palace, exercise 2. The recall was instantaneous, sharp, and effortless. He realized that his physical state had primed his mental state. The true secret lay not in the individual exercises, but in the daily consistency and integration of all 10. Chapter 12. The Architect of His Own Destiny. Weeks turned into months, and Elias's life fundamentally changed. The fog had lifted, replaced by a bright, manageable clarity. His focus was like a laser beam. He could immerse himself in a difficult text for hours and emerge with a complete, synthesized understanding. His memory was reliable. The memory palace grew larger and more detailed every week. His mental power manifested in his English fluency, with professors noting his sharper analysis and unusual mental acuity. Elias realized the book hadn't given him a new brain. It had taught him how to use the magnificent one he already had. He was now the master of his own focus and the keeper of his own mind. He was the ambidextrous architect, the constructor of the invisible home, and the synthesizer. He picked up a pen, his non-dominant hand reaching for it instinctively, and wrote a single, clear sentence in his journal. The true measure of a mind is not what it contains, but how well it is organized. The journey to unlock his potential had just begun. The Labyrinth of the Mind, a Condensed Journey. Chapter 1, The Fog in the Library. Elias Thorne, a 22-year-old ancient history student, felt his mind was an old, dusty attic. Despite his intelligence, he suffered from a crippling lack of clarity and focus. He'd reread dense paragraphs multiple times, only to recall nothing but the shape of the letters. His memory was failing him, allowing important dates and facts to vanish into a persistent mental fog. One frustrating afternoon in the city's oldest library, he stumbled upon a small, dusty shelf labeled Cognitive Cartography. There he found a slim, leather-bound volume with no listed author, The Labyrinth of the Mind, A Pilgrim's Guide to Inner Space. It promised a journey, a series of 10 specific daily brain exercises designed to illuminate the forgotten corners of the mind and forge new, powerful neural pathways. Elias, desperate for a change, accepted the challenge. Chapter 2, The Non-Dominant Hand Challenge, Neurobics. Exercise 1, The Ambidextrous Architect. The book explained that the brain is a bilateral engine, and forcing the non-dominant hand to perform a daily task awakens the opposite hemisphere, forging new neural connections and improving alertness. As a right-handed man, Elias's first task was simple: write his to-do list using only his left hand. The result was a clumsy scrawl, but the intense, deliberate focus required to shape each letter created a faint, tingling mental warmth. For the first time all day, the fog felt a little thinner. The book suggested continuing the neurobic exercises by brushing his teeth and eating a meal with the wrong hand. With each clumsy act, his focus narrowed, pulling his attention away from general worries and concentrating it intensely on the precise movement of the moment. Chapter 3, The Memory Palace Method of Loci. Exercise 2, Constructing the Invisible Home. To address memory issues, the book introduced the method of loci, or the memory palace. This technique anchors abstract information to concrete, familiar spatial locations. Elias chose his small apartment as his palace. The first task was to memorize 10 key events in Julius Caesar's life by placing them as absurd, vivid objects in his entrance hall. For instance, for Caesar's capture by pirates, he pictured a tiny pirate ship sailing out of the keyhole with an oversized gold-painted statue of Caesar on deck. For crossing the Rubicon, he imagined the coat rack was a river, with a toy soldier throwing a red dice into the water. By spending an hour mentally walking through his apartment and seeing these bizarre scenes, he instantly recalled the 10 events in order. The visualization transformed dull facts into a mental movie, making his memory feel like a well-organized, peculiar museum. Chapter 4, Dual Tasking, the Mental Multitasker. Exercise 3, The Sensory Sync. The book warned against digital multitasking, but proposed controlled dual tasking to boost working memory and mental flexibility. The challenge: listen to an academic podcast on an unfamiliar subject while simultaneously solving a simple Sudoku puzzle. The task forced Elias to quickly switch his attention, not simply divide it, between the auditory stream of information, quantum physics, and the visual task, Sudoku. This demanding process acted like an interval workout for his brain. After 20 minutes, he completed the puzzle and retained the core concept of the podcast. The exercise demanded quick, clean shifts of focus, strengthening his prefrontal cortex. Chapter 5, The Power of Verbalization. Exercise 4, The Explainer. This exercise focused on the connection between language and thought. True comprehension is the ability to explain a complex topic simply. The task: choose a difficult concept like the economic causes of the French Revolution and explain it out loud for 10 minutes, as if teaching a skeptical 7-year-old. Elias used an analogy about a cake. The king and rich people ate it all, and the poor people starved and got angry, to explain the concepts of economic inequality and the Ancien regime. The act of self-correction and simplifying forced a deeper engagement with the material than reading alone ever could. His critical thinking skills sharpened as he identified the gaps in his own knowledge. Chapter 6, Nature's Focus, Mindfulness. Exercise 5, the Sensory Catalog. To counter the constant information overload of the digital world, the book prescribed mindfulness through sensory focus. The task: spend 15 minutes in nature and identify at least 10 distinct sounds, 10 distinct smells, and 10 distinct visual textures. Sitting in the park, Elias cataloged the far-off hiss of a bus, the earthy scent of moss, and the rough bark of an oak tree. This exercise was an intensive course in pure attention. By concentrating his mind entirely on sensory details, he momentarily silenced his inner chatter. He returned to his studies with a renewed sense of calm and a startling increase in his ability to concentrate on a static page of text. Chapter 7, The Art of Vocabulary Expansion. Exercise 6, The Etymology Detective. A strong vocabulary provides more precise tools for thought. The task: learn 5 new complex English words daily. For each word, research its root, etymology, use it in 3 unique sentences, and teach it to someone else. Elias's words included ephemeral and sempiternal. He discovered that ephemeral, lasting a short time, came from the Greek for upon the day, and sempiternal, everlasting, came from the Latin for always eternal, immediately establishing them as opposites. By linking the words to their origins, he created a network in his mind, not just a list, ensuring the words became rooted in his long-term memory. Chapter 8, The Numerical Challenge. Exercise 7, Mental Math Gymnastics. Relying on a calculator bypasses the brain's natural ability to perform complex calculations, which utilizes working memory and sequential logic. This practice was strenuous, demanding absolute, uninterrupted focus and disciplined, step-by-step thinking. It was like lifting mental weights. The tangible benefit was an improved ability to follow long, complex arguments in his history texts without losing the logical thread. Chapter 9, The Cognitive Reversal. Exercise 8, The What-If Architect. Mental power requires cognitive flexibility and creative problem-solving, the ability to see a situation from multiple contradictory angles. The task: take a firmly held belief, e.g., the internet is a net positive for society, and argue in detail the exact opposite position. Elias spent the evening formulating arguments against the internet, focusing on the loss of community, the erosion of long-form attention, and the tribalism of social media. He felt a mental friction, but by forcing himself to sincerely inhabit the opposite perspective, he strengthened his critical thinking skills and enhanced his mental agility, learning that his own beliefs were not absolute truths. Chapter 10, The Art of Deep Reading. Exercise 9, The Synthesizer. In an age of constant skimming, the book called for a return to deep reading. The task: read an extremely dense, challenging, nonfiction text for 1 hour. Afterwards, write a 1-page summary that not only outlines the main points, but also synthesizes the author's argument, identifying its strengths and weaknesses. Elias chose a philosophical treatise. He read with a pen, actively annotating, drawing diagrams, and questioning the author in the margins. The summary required him to reconstruct the author's world inside his own mind, a process that demanded maximum focus and contextual memory. The philosophical concepts that had seemed impenetrable now felt like complex but navigable terrain. Chapter 11, Integration, the Body-Mind Loop. Exercise 10, The Physical Anchor. The final exercise integrated mind and body, recognizing that the brain is nourished by motion. The task: engage in a moderate to vigorous physical activity for 30 minutes and immediately afterwards revisit and practice one of the 9 previous mental exercises. Elias ran for 30 minutes, increasing blood flow and priming his brain with oxygen and nutrients. Immediately after cooling down, he sat down and revisited his memory palace, exercise 2. The recall was instantaneous, sharp, and effortless. He realized that his physical state had primed his mental state. The true secret lay not in the individual exercises, but in the daily consistency and integration of all 10. Chapter 12. The Architect of His Own Destiny. Weeks turned into months, and Elias's life fundamentally changed. The fog had lifted, replaced by a bright, manageable clarity. His focus was like a laser beam. He could immerse himself in a difficult text for hours and emerge with a complete, synthesized understanding. His memory was reliable. The memory palace grew larger and more detailed every week. His mental power manifested in his English fluency, with professors noting his sharper analysis and unusual mental acuity. Elias realized the book hadn't given him a new brain. It had taught him how to use the magnificent one he already had. He was now the master of his own focus and the keeper of his own mind. He was the ambidextrous architect, the constructor of the invisible home, and the synthesizer. He picked up a pen, his non-dominant hand reaching for it instinctively, and wrote a single, clear sentence in his journal. The true measure of a mind is not what it contains, but how well it is organized. The journey to unlock his potential had just begun.